Russia wants the world to believe that Ukraine is on the edge of defeat and that only a peace deal that favors Russia, delivered right now, will save it. Ukraine says differently. Scratch that, Ukraine is proving differently with every passing day as it continues to launch strikes that cause damage, break records, and see the country pulling off world firsts at a time when Vladimir Putin and his cronies say that Ukraine is on its knees. And Ukraine just did it again. Ukraine just sank a $400 million Russian submarine in a world-first underwater drone strike. Now, Putin knows that not having much of a traditional navy doesn't hold Ukraine back. His Black Sea submarines are in major trouble as the Subsea Baby is now on the prowl. On December 15th, the Kyiv Post was among several outlets that reported on Ukraine's remarkable strike, noting that the Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU, was behind the attack. The SBU had deployed a brand new drone capable of operating underwater to strike a Russian submarine based in the Novorossiysk naval base. The drones didn't just score hits, they shattered through the submarine's hull, causing it to sink. That submarine was a Kilo class, which naval technology describes as an attack submarine designed by Russia to engage in anti-submarine and anti-surface ship activities. With Ukraine deploying neither of these assets in the Black Sea or Sea of Azov, Russia's Kilo classes have changed course. They are now firing missiles at Ukraine's cities and energy infrastructure from their hidden locations under the waves. A Kilo-class sub can stay submerged for up to 45 days, reaching a maximum diving depth of 300 meters or around 984 feet in the process. As for missiles, the Kilo-class is fitted with launchers for 8 Igla or Strela 3 surface-to-air missiles. However, Russia has been using those launchers to send Caliber cruise missiles in Ukraine's direction, as you'll learn a little later in the video. The point here is simple. Russia had a useful submarine, and that submarine is now gone thanks to a lethal SBU strike. Though it hasn't specified the time or date of its world-first submarine strike, the SBU has published a press release through which it delivered as many details as it feels comfortable providing. For the first time in history, underwater drones Subsea Baby blew up a Russian submarine of the class 636.3 Varshavyanka, according to NATO classification Kilo. As a result of the explosion, the submarine suffered critical damage and was actually put out of action, the SBU declared. There are some interesting nuggets of information there, not least the mention of the Subsea Baby, which is a drone that Ukraine doesn't appear to have used before. The SBU continues, stating, "On board the submarine were 4 launchers of Caliber cruise missiles, which the enemy uses to strike the territory of Ukraine." There is Ukraine's reason for the strike in a nutshell. Depriving Russia of Caliber cruise missiles is always helpful, though Russia can always build more. But taking away the platforms that Russia requires to launch these missiles is a far stronger strategy, especially when that platform is a very expensive submarine that Russia won't be able to repair or replace easily. The SBU went on to share some more interesting details. It noted that the strike was the result of cooperation between the SBU and the naval forces of Ukraine, and that the Kilo-class submarine that Russia just lost was designed to be as stealthy as possible. It's even known as the Black Hole because the submarine has a hull that is capable of absorbing sound, which makes it invisible to traditional radar. The SBU hasn't revealed how it located the submarine, though it may be the case that Ukraine now has Subsea Baby drones patrolling the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov waters, all on the hunt for Russia's submarines. A seek-and-destroy mission of sorts, and one that has proven to be very effective near Novorossiysk. This was also an expensive strike for Russia to absorb, as the SBU explains. The cost of a Varshavyanka-class submarine is about $400 million. Given the international sanctions imposed, the construction of a similar submarine could currently cost up to $500 million, the SBU reports. That's between $400 and $500 million that Russia absolutely doesn't want to be spending right now. With over half of its sovereign wealth fund depleted, a rising budget deficit, a complete lack of foreign investment, and state-run businesses facing enormous debts, all as reported by Simon Tisdall of The Guardian, Russia is now drawing ever closer to the brink of economic collapse. Putin now has a choice to make: build a new submarine at great cost, or accept the fact that Ukraine has just taken out one of his most valuable assets in the Ukraine war. Neither is a choice that Putin wants to make. Frankly, Russia's president would have thought this was a choice he'd never have to make, as Ukraine wasn't supposed to be able to hit any of Russia's submarines. But it can, it has, and the SBU has the video to prove it. The video was published alongside the SBU's press release, and it proves that Ukraine's undersea drones have done exactly what the SBU claims. Lasting for about a minute, the video highlights the Russian submarine at Novorossiysk, making sure that every viewer knows exactly where to train their eyes. A few seconds pass, then boom. A huge explosion sends water and smoke flying into the sky at the submarine's location. Ukraine's Subsea Baby hit its target, and Russia never saw the attack coming. This attack was a world first, though maybe not in the way that you're thinking. Ukraine has managed to pull off a strike against a Russian submarine before, way back in September 2023. According to the New York Times, a pre-dawn attack carried out against the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet in Crimea saw Ukraine cause damage to the Kilo-class submarine Rostov-on-Don. That attack featured a handful of aerial drones, though the bulk of the damage appears to have been done by cruise missiles. That's the difference. September 2023 saw Ukraine pull off a world first by taking out a Russian submarine using cruise missiles. In December 2025, the world's first was that Ukraine used an underwater drone that nobody even knew about to take out a submarine. The Subsea Baby is real, it's effective, and it's ready to take out even more Russian vessels. However, we don't know much about it, and that is entirely by Ukraine's design. In its report on the SBU's submarine strike, the New York Times says that it's known that Ukraine has been developing a fleet of miniature submarines that are believed to be about a foot or so in diameter. Those drones act almost like long-range torpedoes, though their nature as drones suggests that Ukrainian operatives are able to direct them when they're underwater. Looking like black cylinders with fins, some of these mini-submarines can travel hundreds of miles, and they carry explosive payloads that make them a nightmare to deal with for any vessel, including Russia's submarines, that aren't able to see them coming. Is the Subsea Baby one of these mini-submarines? It's possible, though nobody knows for sure. The Kyiv Post also speculates about the nature of Ukraine's new drone, with particular attention paid to the naming. Ukraine's SBU already operates an unmanned surface vessel named the Sea Baby, leading the Kyiv Post to suggest that there may be a relationship between this powerful waterborne drone and the unmanned vessel that the SBU just used to punch holes through the hull of a Russian Kilo-class submarine. Incidentally, we know just how powerful the Sea Baby can be after Ukraine used it to target a pair of Russian Shadow Fleet ships sailing near Turkey. Check out our video to find out more about that strike, and to potentially discover how much power the Subsea Baby might have if it's related to the Sea Baby surface drone. The traditional Sea Baby was unveiled soon after Putin launched the Ukraine invasion, and it's been used against numerous Black Sea Fleet targets. July 2023 also saw Ukraine use Sea Baby drones to strike some of the support columns used to hold up the Kerch Bridge, which connects Crimea to mainland Russia. In October, Ukraine also unveiled upgraded versions of the Sea Baby, with this newer drone now being capable of traveling up to 1,500 kilometers, or around 932 miles, while carrying an explosive warhead that weighs 2,000 kilograms, or a little over 2.2 tons. The Subsea Baby shares its name with the original Sea Baby. If it shares the same distance and payload specifications, Ukraine's supposed mini-submarine may not be so mini after all. It could also be an absolute monster that Russia's submarines now have to try to find a way to handle. But again, this is speculation, as the SBU hasn't revealed any concrete information about the Subsea Baby or what it's capable of doing. This is a purposeful choice, because Ukraine wants Russia to know as little about its cutting-edge weapons as possible. The less Russia knows, the more difficult it becomes for Russia to build countermeasures to Ukraine's new drones. There's an old idiom that goes, "Loose lips sink ships." Ukraine is rewriting that idiom so that it now goes, "Tight lips sink submarines." That covers everything we know about Ukraine's world-first submarine strike. However, what this strike represents and what it could mean for the future of the war is just as important. In particular, this latest SBU attack showcases just how far the Black Sea Fleet has fallen. Once the naval unit that was supposed to ensure that Russia dominated the waters near Ukraine, that fleet has become a laughingstock that is now so useless that even its submarines are getting sunk by a country that barely has a traditional navy. That isn't a joke either. When the Ukraine war started, most analysts assumed that Russia would dominate the Black Sea by virtue of Ukraine's lack of any real sort of operational navy capable of confronting the warships and submarines that Russia could field. Navy Lookout shared what seemed to be the consensus opinion in a 2023 article where it stated, "For its part, Ukraine was without an operational navy able to directly engage the Russian navy at sea. Its position was made all the more insecure due to the inability of its Western allies to intervene at sea, because of the closure of the Turkish Straits and the risk of escalation in the case of any direct involvement of NATO ships. There would be no warships from other countries coming to aid Ukraine, so Russia would have it all its own way in the Black Sea, except it didn't. Instead, Russia's Black Sea Fleet has been dominated almost from the outset of the war, as Ukraine has used missiles, aerial drones, and unmanned surface vessels to devastate the fearsome fleet that was supposed to give Russia control over the Ukrainian seas and coastlines. Fast forward to the end of 2025 and a third of the Black Sea Fleet lies in tatters, according to the US Naval Institute. It highlights cruise missiles and unmanned surface vessels as the deliverers of the damage, noting that Ukraine has been so effective against Russia with both types of weapons that it would behoove the US Navy to learn as many lessons as it can from Russia's Black Sea failures. Traditional naval warfare may no longer exist due to Ukraine's drones. Now the country has introduced a new drone that is capable of sneaking into Russian ports to take out submarines while remaining undetected. That's a capability that nobody, least of all Putin, could have expected Ukraine to develop when Russia started the war. And with that capability, Ukraine now has what it needs to complete the humiliation of a fleet that has already devolved from one of Russia's great power projectors into an absolute embarrassment for the Kremlin. The National Security Journal says that there is no other single military service taking part in the Ukraine war that has been embarrassed as totally as Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Many of Putin's warships have retreated to ports that Russia hopes are outside the range of Ukraine's missiles, only emerging when it's time to rattle off a few missiles before they scurry back to their docks. The Black Sea Fleet is still active, as the journal points out. But the emergence of the Subsea Baby means that Russia can no longer feel safe that the ships it has stationed in Novorossiysk and elsewhere are safe from Ukraine's wrath. Ukraine still has more work to do. That's especially the case when it comes to Russia's Black Sea submarine threat. In August 2024, naval news reported that Russia had deployed 3 submarines, all armed with cruise missiles, to the Black Sea for the first time. It's those submarines that have been sending Caliber missiles into Ukraine's cities and infrastructure, and it seems to be one of those subs that Ukraine just destroyed with its underwater drone. At the very least, that means there are 2 more submarines that Ukraine can take out, and it's likely that the SBU is gathering intelligence on those submarines as we speak. We know that it took out the Kilo-class submarine it destroyed in December at the Novorossiysk base, so it seems likely that Ukraine has eyes on that base. Russia's submarines won't be safe there. They also can't stay underwater forever. What we may see happen next is a dangerous game of underwater cat and mouse. Russia's submarines will have to work even harder to rattle off their missiles and escape undetected, all while Ukraine's Subsea Babies hunt them, or perhaps loiter in wait near Russia's Black Sea and Sea of Azov ports, waiting for more opportunities to strike. The operation demonstrated that autonomous underwater drones can redefine classical naval combat concepts, Euromaidan Press said of what the SBU pulled off with its Subsea Baby strike. Submarines, which traditionally had the advantage due to the stealth of their hulls, black holes, are now vulnerable to modern unmanned technologies, the outlet adds. Vulnerability is a problem for Putin, as his subs no longer offer him guaranteed strikes on Ukraine with no recourse. Every attack that they launch from now on will be monitored, and Subsea Baby drones may be lying in wait to take the rest of the Black Sea Fleet submarines out. That's without mentioning how these drones could present just as much of a threat to surface vessels, both warships and the Shadow Fleet ships that sail through the Black Sea. Who needs a navy when these new drones can be just as effective? That's the message that Ukraine wants to put out to the world, as the Kyiv Independent says in its report on the SBU's exploits. Ukraine's lack of a traditional navy hasn't stopped it from shutting the Black Sea Fleet down. And the arrival of a new underwater drone means that Ukraine has scored a major narrative victory over Moscow. That brings us nicely to our next point, which is that the SBU's latest strike serves as a perfect counter to Russia's attempts to create the narrative that Ukraine is a spent military power whose fall is inevitable. With peace negotiations picking up steam, Putin has been trying to gain leverage by claiming Russian victories and Ukrainian weakness, all to sway the US into placing more pressure on Ukraine to accept peace terms that favor Russia. Ukraine is having none of that narrative building, and it's been actively proving that there is not only plenty of fight left in the country, but capabilities that demonstrate that it can do damage beyond what anybody knew about before. Continued adaptation is what the Subsea Baby represents in the battle for peace negotiation leverage, as Ukraine can now highlight this underwater drone as yet another example of how the country is far more innovative and dangerous than Putin gives it credit for being. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has discussed the importance of subverting the Russian narrative, proving it to be full of falsehoods and Kremlin propaganda in the process. During a recent visit to Kupiansk, which Russia claims to have fully captured, Zelensky said, "Today, achieving results on the front line is crucial so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy. This is exactly how it works. Strong positions inside the country translate into strong positions in negotiations to end the war." That speech came at a time when Ukraine had encircled dozens of Russian soldiers in Kupiansk as Russia continued to claim that it held the city. Controlling the narrative is Ukraine's goal, and the emergence of the Subsea Baby is another piece of leverage that Zelensky can use in peace negotiations. Strong positions at sea are as important as strong positions on the front lines, and Ukraine increasingly has both, which shatters the Kremlin stories. Putin wants to create a defenseless version of Ukraine that he can invade later, and he wants to use peace negotiations to do it. Ukraine's job, which is doing very well, is proving that it's far from the spent force that Putin claims it to be. Finally, there's the direct impact the SBU's destruction of a Kilo-class submarine has on the war. We've touched on this impact several times already. Ukraine has just taken a Kalibr cruise missile launching platform out of the war. Russia has been using the Black Sea Fleet to launch these cruise missiles at Ukraine since at least October 2022, as reported by the US Naval Institute News at the time. Even then, Russia targeted civilians ahead of military targets, as Brigadier General Pat Ryder pointed out. We do know that they've used these capabilities to strike targets in Ukraine, to include some of the civilian infrastructure, energy and energy grid targets, for example, that have been part of the continued Russian missile strikes against civilian and military targets in Ukraine, Ryder said of Russia's Kalibr missiles back in 2022. The Kalibr cruise missile is a dangerous weapon, regardless of whether its target is civilian or military. Missile Threat says that the Kalibr has a range of between 1,500 and 2,500 kilometers, or 932 to about 1,550 miles, and it carries a 450 kilogram or 992 pound explosive warhead. There are also suggestions that the Kalibr may be nuclear capable, which adds another layer to what the SBU did with its Subsea Baby strike. It hasn't just taken a cruise missile platform out of the equation. It's removed a submarine that Russia might have used to strengthen its nuclear threats in the future. Russia's attacks against civilians won't stop with the destruction of one Kilo-class submarine. But even a handful of Kalibr cruise missiles no longer being launched is positive news for Ukraine, as is the prospect of the Subsea Baby being active enough to start targeting other Russian submarines and surface vessels in the future. The narrative has officially switched, and it's Ukraine that has the upper hand now. And it's not just the Black Sea where we see Ukraine disproving Putin's propaganda. We mentioned Kupiansk earlier, and that city has become the site of one of Ukraine's greatest victories thus far in the war. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's latest and greatest innovations. And thank you for watching.